Every now and then I get a request to build an airliner, and it has been a while since I've done one, so why not have a go at this Revell Boeing 747 in 1:390 scale. Hello everyone, I'm Matt, this is Model Minutes, and join me as I build and review this tiny kit of a massive plane. For a deeper dive inside the box of this kit, check out the detailed unboxing video I've already made. In this video I'll be completing the build of the model and rounding it off with a review. As usual, I'll put a list of the products I used on the screen now to give you an idea of the kind of things to go and get if you fancy replicating the results you see here. Without any further ado, let's get into it. The first step was to remove the parts from the sprue. As normal, I'll use my cutters and I'll also clean up any flash with a sharp knife or a sanding stick. This is a fairly old tooling, so there is some flash and cleanup required on most of the parts. Tamiya extra thin cement will be my glue of choice during this build. And the first thing to do was to glue together the two fuselage halves. Once that was done and the glue had dried, I would sand down the seam line to make it less noticeable. There is a clear cockpit window part, but it is a little bit redundant. I did have to clean out the slot where this clear part goes, but seeing as there is going to be a decal to replicate the clear windows later on, this being a clear part is a little bit pointless. I also found that it didn't quite fit perfectly and it had an odd shape to it. So I used some Ammo MIG putty surfacer to fill in the gaps and try and make the shape a little bit better. When a number of layers of this product had dried, it would be sanded as smooth as I could get it. After this, I joined the upper wings to the lower wings, which could then be glued into the slots in the side of the fuselage. The same would be done as well for the tail surfaces at the rear. One thing I did notice about the tail surfaces at the rear is there are slightly different levels. I don't think that was typical of the real 747, but in this kit they are slightly staggered with one above the other. This aircraft does come with a wheels raised option, so I've decided to go for that. Here I'm gluing into place the nose landing gear covers. You could of course display the wheels lowered if you'd prefer, as those parts are also included. I also repeated this step with the main landing gear bay covers as well. You'll see that I've already cut a slot for the display stand in the bottom of the plane. These landing gear covers come in a number of parts, and it was a little bit fiddly getting them in the right places. And speaking of fiddly parts, it was now time to move on to the engine assemblies. All four engines come in the same kind of design. A very crude representation of the engine fan needs to be glued in one half, and then the other half of the engine nacelle is glued over the top. I won't add these to the aircraft just yet. I'll do some painting before I get to that point. A clear display stand is included in the kit, which is a nice addition, but I found I had to remove a little flash to get it to fit together correctly. Also, due to the quality of the plastic, it doesn't look great in a clear finish, so I'll do something about that in a minute. And now it's time to prime. It was a nice day, so I decided to take this outside and use some Tamiya surface primer in grey. All of the parts were given a coat of this primer, and it should help give a good surface for the subsequent layers of paint to stick to. Also, there is something that needs to stay grey, so I will mask that shortly. Before I come inside though, I want to address that display stand. It's already received a primer base, so now when that was dry, some Hobbycraft black spray paint was sprayed over the top to give a nice uniform matte black finish. I think this looks a lot better than leaving it in the clear bare plastic. When that was done, I moved back inside and loaded some AmmoMig matte aluminium into my airbrush. This was sprayed onto the engine nacelle components, and then when that was done, onto the wing parts as well. You can see that I've masked the grey areas of the wing with some tape. This was a little fiddly actually, putting the tape in, especially on the undersides, as it has to move around all those little sort of protrusions on the lower side of the wing. Once that was done, I carefully removed the masks, and they seem to have done a pretty good job. Up next, it was time to use some Hobbycraft white paint. So for this, I've actually masked all the areas that need to stay grey and aluminium, which are the wings and tail surfaces, so the main body can be painted completely white. After this, some semi-matte varnish would be applied to the entire model, and you can see I've already removed the masks at this point. This semi-matte varnish should give a smooth, uniform finish to the model in preparation for some decals. And speaking of the decals, you get one small sheet for the single paint scheme that is included in this kit. The sheet was cut into more manageable sections, and then they were dipped into warm water to help remove them from the backing paper. And if you'd like to get your own brush water mug so you don't mix it up with your cup of tea, check out my merch store. It helps support the channel. Microset and Microsol will be my setting solutions, and they were used to help apply the decals. Microset from the blue bottle was used first, painted onto the relevant areas, and then the decal slid into place. It should help soften the transfer into the plastic, allowing it to form around any details. Once the decal is applied, some Microsol can be further added over the top to further the softening effect. I found the decals to be quite easy to use. They are printed to a nice quality and apply to the model pretty well. Perhaps my only real concern is that we have side panels with all of the windows on, and they don't quite align with the moulded window details. It's close, but not quite perfect. Other than this though, there weren't any real problems applying the decals to the model. Once they were on the model and had been left to cure, a further coat of the semi-matte varnish would be applied to the entire model to help seal them in. After this, I mixed up some white paint with some gloss, and this was carefully hand painted onto the areas of the engine nacelles that required it. I decided to do it this way because I thought masking it might be a little bit tricky. Once that was done, some gunmetal paint would be used to pick out some of the smaller details on the engine nacelles. And with the nacelles complete, they could then be glued into the correct slots on the lower side of the aircraft. I needed to make sure at this point to get the right ones in the right places, as they have slightly different designs for the inboard and outboard engines. The final step was to pop the plane onto its display stand, and with that I'm going to call this build complete. And that's another build under the belt. So this one is a bit of a mixed bag, if I'm honest. I find it has some pretty nice features, such as those decals, they went on really nicely. And also the model features some nice recessed details. However, it's not particularly brilliant in some other respects, such as the amount of flash that needed to be cleaned up. And also some things have just a bit of a wonky quality to them. That tail surface being a little bit misaligned and not being like flush, horizontal, was a bit weird. And also I questioned some of the shapes of some of the parts. Those engine nacelles don't look quite right, but I get the feeling when this kit was designed they went with a "it's close enough" kind of attitude. I didn't find the construction of this kit nor the painting particularly stressful. Most of this was done with rattle cans, so it just goes to show how sort of quickly you can get a reasonable looking model. I do keep a note of everything that I do in my modelling journal, which are a series of books I've created to help you on your workbench. I do keep a log of everything that I do in my own copy, and in here it took me about 5 days to complete this one, but obviously I was balancing that with other commitments. I think realistically you could probably get this one done in a weekend, if you decided you wanted to get through it quite quickly. I do quite like that this kit comes with a display stand so you can have it in a flying pose, or if you would prefer there is a lowered wheels option as well so you can have it on the ground. It is at a slightly strange scale of 1 to 390 though, and I did a search online and can't really find anything that goes along with this, so it's a kind of one-off kind of model kit. It doesn't seem to be a particularly popular scale. And all of these slight oddities that I've mentioned sort of lend itself to the fact that this is a slightly older tooling. From what I can tell online, this is actually a Nitto tooling from 1972. So I'm sure back in 1972 it was a very impressive model kit, but now, with our standards being slightly higher, it's kind of coming in a little bit lower. It would seem that at some point Revell acquired the tooling for this kit, and this version I have here has been in production since the mid-90s. Perhaps my only real concern with this kit is the fact that its recommended retail price when I originally bought it was €5.99 in euros, which was around about £5 here in the UK. However, it does seem that since I started creating this project that the price has actually gone up on the Revell website. They're now suggesting that we should part with £7.99. That does seem a little bit excessive to me. I did pay £7.50 for my example in a well-known hobby chain here in the UK, and I definitely thought I'd been overcharged when I bought it. I don't know if this recommended retail price is UK specific or if it is cheaper in the continent, but if you're looking to get this kit I would definitely be suggesting you shop around for the best deal. I think we could imagine it retailing at that price if it perhaps came with a second paint scheme, but sadly the one you get inside the box is pretty much it. I think, though, it's probably time to wrap this one up. I didn't hate building this kit, and I think that if you want something to do, you want a sort of cheap airline model to have a go at and practice some new techniques, then this is not a bad choice. However, it does have a few problems such as excess flash that needs to be cleaned up, and maybe some questionable shaping in the design. Of course though, if you do look for this one, make sure you get it for a good price. And with that, I'm going to leave this one here. Let me know down in the comments what you think of my build and if my assessment of this kit is fair. As always, a quick shout out to my Model Club members for the extra support they give the channel. Massive thanks to these guys on screen, and if you'd like to join them and get the perks that these guys get, take a look at the links in the description. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome our latest members to the club. They are Adrian and Joxo. Welcome to the club. There are other ways to help support the channel as well, and if you'd like more information, check out the links below the video. The best way to support the channel for free though is by subscribing with notifications turned on so you never miss a modelling upload. Finally though, last thing to say is a massive thank you to you for watching this one, and I'll see you all on the workbench again next time.